I'm Christopher Schoenwald, and welcome to Life as a show intently focused on helping people find their professional pathway by exploring and unearthing the details of jobs from around the world. Before we get into today's episode, I just want to throw this out there. I have a channel over on YouTube, Life as a ... which basically hosts highlights from these audio conversations that I have with these great guests. They typically run 10 to 15 minutes, and they're there to kind of present a different vantage point. You know, for people that aren't into audio, aren't into podcasts, but are still looking for career advice, ideas, help, all that great stuff, send them over to YouTube. Like I said, Life as a ... And if you do get over there, I would love that like or subscribe. I mean, it's the best way to let that algorithm know that the content is worth sharing and should be out there. So anyway, I do thank you for letting me plug this a little bit, but I think it's about time to get into today's episode. I don't know about you, but one of the coolest jobs out there has to be that of an archaeologist. I mean, think about it. The work often involves extreme travel to remote regions of the world, and elements of discovery are definitely embedded into it all. There's even a movie franchise based on the field of archaeology. Indy Jones, anyone? Well, it does kind of go without saying that there is more to the job than what I just mentioned. Think teaching, challenging fieldwork, technology, and so much more. Well, in today's episode, we're going to dive into it all with an actual professor of archaeology who not only brings passion, a wealth of experience, but also an entertaining approach to the examination of the work. Plus, he shares a couple of stories, one of which will have you squirming and the other inspired. I mean, all up, this episode is ultra informative, and if you're considering this line of work or simply curious, listen in. You won't be disappointed. Alrighty, well, let me more formally introduce him to you, and we can launch into things. Since 1993, Dr. Andrew Kinkella has spent 17 field seasons in the jungles of west central Belize studying the classic Maya. His archaeological research focuses on a string of 25 cenotes, which are small, deep lakes, located in the Cara Blanca region of Belize, and how the ancient Maya used these cenotes during water rituals. Now, this research includes the exploration of the cenotes using diving equipment to document artifacts that have been underwater for over 1,000 years. In addition to working in Belize, Dr. Kinkella is also the director of the Moorpark College Archaeological Program, or MCAP, which teaches archaeology through research at local California archaeological sites. And by the way, Dr. Kinkella has also worked around the world in places like Guatemala, Mexico, and Germany. Now, for those who know Dr. Kinkella, it's clear to see he's a guy who's passionate about using his teaching position to enrich his students' lives through the joy and excitement of archaeology. And he's currently working on expanding his audience through publishing, YouTube, podcasting, and other media outlets. So with all this noted, I'd love to welcome you to my conversation with Dr. Andrew Kinkella. Yeah, so welcome to the program. How are you doing today, Dr. Kinkella?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm happy to be here. How's it going for yourself?
Yeah, not bad at all. And we're just talking, off air, how difficult it has been to get somebody within your field onto this program. So I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here today.
Yeah, and even though began our conversation off air, I think one of the things we said was really important. The fact that you couldn't get anybody, like, that really bothers me. I'm just going to go out on the front end on here and just be like, one thing that archaeology really needs is to connect with the public, right? This is super important. And not enough people in, my industry, my profession will take it seriously. And take the time to do that. Now, I'm not alone. There are some others that do that, which is great, but the percentages suck, and so I just have to start with like a blanket, I'm sorry, that it took some time to get somebody to talk to you about archaeology.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I think there's a lot of interest in the field, like people want to know more about it. That's the thing. That's the disconnect here, I think. So, yeah.
Of course, it's crazy because it's like in the general public, being an archaeologist is almost like being some sort of funky minor superhero. You're like, what? They
Right.
exist?
Yeah.
You could be that?
Yeah.
So of course, and think about how many magazines are sold with, new archaeology discoveries or this kind of thing. That people care.
Yeah.
And we classically don't take advantage of that nearly enough.
Well, hopefully this will be one small step, I guess, in that direction to,
One awesome step.
exactly, yeah, get people more interested in and find out, the facts and details here. So I'm really thrilled, like I said,
Mhm.
to get into it. So why don't we here? I do have this first segment lined
Yeah.
up. Something called Coloring Wikipedia. As my listeners know, it's a segment I just read off a definition of something related to what the guest is all about. Surprise, surprise, I have you down for archaeology. Now, let me just read this off, and then afterwards, maybe you could share your comments. Sound okay?
Yeah. Cool.
Okay, so here we go. Archaeology. Archaeology is the study of human activity through the recovery and analysis of material culture. The archaeological record consists of artifacts, architecture, biofacts or ecofacts, sites, and cultural landscapes. Now, admittedly, this is the most cut and dry definition you're ever going to get. We're not teaching anything new here, but all the same, based off of your professional focus, your experiences, and your take on it, what are your first thoughts?
Well, that definition is very cut and very dry. You know, again, back to what we've already talked about. The problem with archaeology is like, look how dull that explanation was or that definition. Like just reading it, you're like, I don't want to do that. What are they saying? What buildings and what? Right? One of the first problems is the term material culture. They use that all the time. And for the most of us, we're like, material culture?
That's going to trip a lot of
What?
people up,
What's
right?
Yeah, you're like, what? It's artifacts. Artifacts, right? So really, archaeology is the study of the human past through artifacts. That's it. There's no reason to like add on all this blah, 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 right? And it's intrinsically fascinating, right? It's the story. It's the story of human beings. It's the biggest
Yeah,
story.
yeah.
It's the number one story, right? The story we all share. And we want to know the answers to the biggest of big questions, things like who are we? Where are we from?
Minor
What
questions here.
happened to them? Yeah, exactly. Isn't it nuts?
Yeah.
It's the biggest stuff. So that's what we do. It's like archaeology attempts to answer the biggest questions of humanity through artifacts.
Yeah, I love it. I think you should be rewriting it.
Material culture. I hate that term, even though it's correct, but it doesn't sell.
Yeah, yeah, I gotcha. I gotcha. Well, off the top, I did introduce you to listeners when I was, describing you and your background, but maybe you'd like to add a little bit more context to that and fill listeners in on, who you are and what you do.
Sure. On my origin mythology. Yeah. So in terms of, I guess the thing I'm known for in archaeology, if there's such thing, the thing that'll be chiseled on my tombstone is like, here lies Andrew Kinkella, cenote archaeologist. So what I've done a lot of work on is in the Maya area. So in the country of Belize, I've done diving into the cenotes, which are like, think of them as mini lakes, but they can be quite deep. They can be like over 200 feet deep.
Wow.
But these little mini freshwater, yeah, they were real deep,
Mm.
freshwater lakes in the middle of the jungle. And so my research was on how the ancient Maya used these cenotes. Some of them were used for ritual, some of them maybe were just used for water for farmers' fields. How did the local like ancient cities relate to these cenotes, all that kind of stuff, right? It's just sort of like how do these cenotes relate to the ancient Maya? That's kind of the most academic side of myself is working on that, and also on your kind of regular city centers in Belize as well, the ancient Maya, cities in the jungle kind of thing. That's the sort of most academic aspect of me. But then I teach in Southern California, at Moorpark College, and I also work in local archaeology around here. So I work with my students and get them sort of connected to the local archaeology world here. So I irons in two fires, and I guess the third one is the public outreach thing, like this, where it's whether through podcast or YouTube channel or all that kind of good stuff. So I guess maybe I'm a triple threat, right? Maybe
Yeah,
those are my three things. So
nice.
that's me. And I spend my day gig, as you can see, in my palatial office. I am a full-time community college professor.
There you go. Yeah, fully embedded within it all. And we're going to get into some of these things, later in the conversation. And speaking of which, maybe we could step into this next segment here, a day in the life, and we could hear a little bit more about what it looks like to be, say, within the field. And then maybe you could contrast that to where you are right now within the office or, in front of a classroom and whatnot. I think it'd be interesting for listeners to get a feel of what a profession like this could look like.
I gotta say, this office part is way more comfortable than the field one. Man, air conditioning is great. But so a typical day in the field, there's a lot of variety there. I mean, it can be anything. It can be anything from like real difficult, like you're sleeping in a hammock and you wake up with bug bites already, and you're sweaty and you're tired and you're lonely and you're depressed, but you still have to put on your backpack, take down your hammock, pack that all away, and then just sort of start walking into the jungle with a machete, hoping to kind of map in any evidence of the ancient Maya as you go. These might be artifacts, or it might be different structures of different sizes, anything from the remains of an ancient farmer's house, which is just going to be a mound that's maybe 2 or 3 feet high, up to a much larger structure that you might find somewhere in the jungle. And sort of recording those, writing those down, finding a place to sit down to eat lunch. That's the worst, because in the jungle, like, what you don't realize, it's like, if you want to know what the jungle's like, make a salad, put it in your fridge for 2 weeks, take it out, and then walk through it. Like, that's what a jungle is like. It's just this like wilty, old, wet salad.
Yeah.
And sort of you're going through that. And where do you sit down? These are the things they don't have college classes on.
Yeah.
Where to sit down in the jungle.
Where to do a few other things, I'm sure, as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the finding, if you just find some sort of stone or boulder, you're like, oh, thank God. Okay, we're gonna sit here and eat lunch. And so you eat lunch, you keep going, and it's intrinsically tiring. A field day. A field day is tiring. It'll take
I'm
it out
kind
of
of
you.
getting this vibe that it's not your most favorite thing to do, or maybe you're leading up to the point where it's like, well, despite all of this, when you find that thing, then all of that goes away. Or I don't know, maybe I cut you off too soon there, but
Oh, you cut me off way too soon. I'm very angry. No, it's funny because it's always like this.
Yeah.
If you ask any, I don't know, explorer type person, or what's hilarious for me is if you read explorers' logs from like 100 years ago,
Yeah.
it's all the same. It's all the same. Where they're just bitching about getting like bitten by bugs constantly, and that they like ran out of food. Like,
Yeah.
I bitched about the same stuff in my own journal, and so it is intrinsically uncomfortable, but it's intrinsically super exciting at
There
the
you
same
go.
moment.
There you go.
So it is always the same in that way. And there's a portion of it that is just extremely attractive. It's like once you do it, you're like, I just like doing this. I just I like being in that wilty salad. I just like the jungle. I just like it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just do.
Yeah.
So that really helps. But while you're doing it, I will say, if it's really hardcore, like you're living in tents or in hammocks or whatever, it's nice to be able to somehow go back into town for the weekend or something like that. That's huge, because you just get long-term tired if you're just in the jungle all the time, and you need to kind of
How long would you be in? I'm sure it varies project to project, but what would be like an average, or what's been your longest, maybe even?
It's all over the place. So every year is different. The longest I've ever been away was 4 months, right? 4 months was the longest. I've done a lot. If I'm looking back, I've done a lot of like 6 weekers or 2 monthers. Now, in that time, maybe it's usually where you kind of break it up, where maybe a lot of the time you're actually living in town. You're actually living in a kind of a basic house, which is like not bad. It still might not have any air conditioning or whatever, but it's like
It's not the jungle, though.
roof over your head.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But then while you do that, maybe you take 2 weeks out of that, and you're like, okay, these 2 weeks, we're going to go camping for these 2 weeks. So it's a lot of times it's a mix like that. And it just depends on the year. It depends on, I've had years where it was quite nice, like living easy, living in a place where they had like a pool. Like, this is awesome. But then other times where it's like, whoa, we're living in a tent for like a month,
Yeah.
So
Okay.
every variety of it.
All right. Now, contrasting that to being within the office, obviously the comfort level is a little different. We kind of touched on
Ah,
that. But yeah, as far as
so
the work
nice.
goes,
So, yeah, a typical day or week as a college professor, it's funny. My schedule is just all over the place, and it's always been like that ever since I started. Meaning that, like, I might have, like, this semester, I have really heavy Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays where I'm teaching like all day, right? Because I have a Saturday field class where we go work out in the field or we learn how to map or this kind of thing. That's like all day. So, and then maybe I have to come in Thursdays to the office to like work on stuff. So I'll have like a Tuesday, Friday off,
okay.
Sunday.
All right. Yeah,
That's,
yeah, yeah.
or I'll teach like a night class. But so there's, a typical day, I guess. I would come into the office in the morning, kind of get ready, and then teach for a few hours. And say I teach two classes in a row or something. Come back, kind of work on some of my stuff, kind of work on more of my kind of archaeology stuff, and then kind of go home. That's maybe as close as a 9 to 5 it gets.
Okay. When you say you're working on your archaeology stuff, like what are you doing there? Are you researching, like, I don't know, some future sites that you might want to check out, or you're going back and comparing things that you found and trying to dig in further and uncover more fact and detail? Like what are you referring to there?
The answer is yes to all.
Okay.
So it's like some weeks you're kind of on the computer, like looking up stuff. Oh, I'm looking up other archaeology projects that might be similar to mine, where I'm like, oh, they did this, kind of getting like tips and tricks from seeing how they did this other one. Other times you might be in the lab, like here at the college, I also have other lab space where you're there either by yourself or with the students, just dealing with the artifacts, kind of bagging and tagging, organizing long-term storage, that kind of stuff. You might be writing a grant, or you might be like trying to get permission to do something, or even like this for me, they'll be like, oh, there's an opportunity to you know be interviewed, or somebody else wants you to write a thing for them, like stuff like that. It's a lot of different stuff.
Okay. So it sounds like variety is embedded within all that you do, extreme
It
variety,
is. It
it would
is.
seem.
It is all over the place.
Yeah, yeah.
The only thing that's kind of set in stone is like, okay, you're teaching these classes Wednesdays, 10 to 11. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
That's set.
Yeah. One last question here. How often are you getting out into the field? Like on a yearly basis? Are we talking a couple times a year?
No, it's not that much. So I did all those long field seasons was when I was younger. It's like, and now, I have a family, but as the children get older, you kind of have this natural curve where it's like you do it a bunch, you have a young family, you do it less. Kids get older, you start to do
So
it
yeah, yeah,
more.
yeah, yeah.
So I'm just kind of swinging up again, where I don't know if I'd go back for these super multi-month long seasons. In a lot of ways, I don't need to. I'm at the point in my career where I can do like a really quick, like a surgical strike. Like, oh, we're just going to go for a week. Oh, we're just going to go for 10 days, and I can get a lot out of that because I've already mapped a lot of stuff in, so I can
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like be more like that. So at this point, that's the kind of thing that I would do in terms of all the ancient Maya stuff. Like I'd go for a week over here in the summer. Oh, 10 days over here. So it's not huge. I might still be sleeping in a hammock one night or two, but that it's a smaller world. But then I am also doing archaeology with my students too, like week to week. So I feel like I'm always in it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It sounds like it. Well, I think we're painting a really nice picture here, for listeners as far as what it's all about. But maybe we could step into yet another segment, a pathways one, and we could rewind a bit. I'm guessing here, a wild assumption that history has always been a thing for you. But what was it that solidified your interest in the field of archaeology that made you decide, like, this is where I want to go, and I want to go all the way with it?
Yeah, it's the travel actually, and traveling with purpose, or doing something that just seemed like fantastical, because I took an intro to archaeology class my freshman year in college, and I thought it was really cool, but I wasn't necessarily like, oh, I'm going to be an archaeologist. It just, as the semesters went by, I took more classes, mysteries in the ancient Maya or whatever, and it just turned out that at UC Santa Barbara, there was a woman there, Dr. Annabelle Ford. She took students every summer to Belize.
Okay.
And she worked at a big Maya site on the Belize-Guatemala border called El Pilar. And I was like, you could do that? That
That's an
just
actual
seems
job.
so
Yeah, yeah,
fantastical
yeah.
and out of the realm of possible. Yeah, or as a student, like you could go, you could. What? You don't need like to take 10 years and learn stuff. No, they need you to move buckets and dig holes. Like they need you. So having that opportunity, I was like, oh yeah, where do I sign up? So I did it. And after working in Belize for a summer, for that first summer, I was just turned 21. That was 3 months, and I was hooked after that because it's like after you work at are you kidding me? An ancient Maya city in the jungle?
Right, right. There's
Like,
a certain element of adventure sort of like embedded into all of this, like with the travel, with the exploration,
yeah,
discovery, all these things. Yeah, 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 yeah.
it's like element. It's like three-quarters of it. I mean, working on an ancient Maya city that's enshrouded in jungle vines and stuff. It's every cliche in the best possible sense. So after that, taking statistics didn't seem as cool. You know what I mean? So I just started to go back and back and back. It's like, oh, hey, next summer. Oh, they're running it again. Do you want to go? Yeah. And I just sort of I started doing this thing where I just kept going to Belize and it hooked me in. And then I sort of operated backwards from how a lot of grad students do. I ended up having a ton of experience. And then I was just like, oh, I should maybe get an advanced degree because I've been doing all this stuff. So that's how it went for me. It was the travel with purpose thing that really hooked me.
Yeah, okay, I got you there. And I guess that would distinguish kind of, going down that path as opposed to being just a straight up historian where you're just like
Yeah,
studying. Yeah, 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 yeah.
it was, and it was more again. Like you said, I always liked that. I always liked that stuff. I always found it. I love the ancient civilization stuff, whether it be Egypt or the Maya or pick your poison. They're all great.
Yeah. So that interest was there before even getting into college. And then,
Yeah, and then it just kind of it was almost subconscious. I just always liked it, and then it just kind of went onward. It's funny. I remember 2 years after being in college, I was undeclared, and I just looked at my own list of classes that I'd taken, and I was like, Andrew, you've taken a ton of anthro classes. Maybe you should be an anthro major. Like it was like the
yeah,
world was telling me
yeah,
what I
yeah,
needed to do, and I was the last person to realize.
yeah, yeah. It's funny how that works out, isn't it? Like I
Hmm.
think a lot of people assume that people have these, visions at a young age and then just beeline straight to where they're
Yeah,
going to go. It rarely, rarely ever goes that way. Stories like
it
yours kind of
was.
illustrate this point and like a bunch of others on this program in particular. Yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, it was not like that at all for me. When I started college, I was going to be a theater major, a drama major.
Wow.
Shocking, I know. But yeah, so
Slightly
that was
different.
kind of yeah. But
There you go. Well, I have another segment here. I know we're jumping all over the place, but a Q&A discovery. You can kind of continue this back and forth. And I'm thinking here that like one of the challenging elements of your work must be this unique blend of, I don't know, fact and conjecture. Like I have no authority to say this, but I'm just assuming that must be a thing. But what would you say to this?
that's actually it's a tough one. You could talk about it in a lot of different ways. What I would say is the short answer is it's not too much of a problem for me myself as an archaeologist. It can be a little weird in terms of what the general public thinks I think or thinks I do. But and what I mean by that is okay, at the end of the day, archaeology is based on facts. It's based on facts. What have you found? And as long as you tell the story of the past based on these facts you found, everything's cool. That's okay. Like there can be disagreements, and there always are. Like in the little tiny world of archaeology where I inhabit, there's always going to be academic, like, oh, you don't know, oh, that's not true. It's about this instead. That stuff is par for the course, and I have no problem with that. But especially as the years go by and you find more facts, I feel good about the stuff I've said. And 20 years from now, people could find that I was totally wrong, but I'm cool with that because I can be like, I get you found I was totally wrong, but it was because you found some more facts
Right.
that I didn't have.
Right.
So I got no problem with that. I've seen other archaeologists have a real B up their butt about some of this, about, I don't know, people disagreeing with them or something.
Yeah.
But I'm cool with it. Again, at the end of the day, you just got to go back to your facts. What do you have? What do you not have? I see this like sometimes too often, especially in the pseudo archaeology world, where they're just trying to push a story. They're trying to push a story and then shoehorn a couple facts in to try and tell the story that they need to tell. It's like, no, 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 no. You go the other way. You go facts first, open mind. What do they tell you?
Yeah.
And there's a elegance to it that's nice when it works out.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. What are some other elements to the job that might fly under the radar to most, but to you are critical aspects of, of what you do and what the field's all about?
There's a million. Off the top of my head, the idea that everything's been found. You get that like you're an archaeologist, Andrew. Hasn't everything been found? What do you do? I'm like, you don't understand. We'll take the jungle as an example. The jungle's hot. The jungle's difficult. Walking through the jungle is a horrendous pain in the ass. So there's still a lot to be found in the jungle because nobody felt like walking out there. It's that simple, So yes, we're not going to find another pyramid of Giza because it's physically so large. You've run into all that. You're not going to, I would be surprised if you find any other huge Maya pyramids that are popping outside the jungle canopy. But there's plenty of stuff that's only 50 feet tall.
Right. Right.
I mean, dude. So my point there is there's so much still out there.
Well, weren't you just mentioning the cenotes, sometimes 200 feet deep,
Yep.
Filled with artifacts and whatnot. Yeah.
Of the 25 cenotes that we work at in that area, we've really dove and really explored, I don't know, 3 of them, 5 of them. There's 20 others. And again, it's like, be my guest.
Yeah.
Life is only so long. I can't do all these. Just if you were interested in structures in the Maya world, there's even major sites. A place like Teotihuacan, which is a huge center in Mexico. Huge pyramids and all that, sort of in more of a sort of a desert, not desert, but just sort of a drier location where you can see everything. Yeah, the main pyramids have been all cleaned down, but there's a bunch of these tall rubble things right off the corner. So at big sites, there's still a ton of stuff. So just for young people getting into it, there's still plenty to do. Don't worry. At the same time, we do want to be respectful of archaeology, and it is, even though there's plenty to do, it is a finite resource, right? So we want to, kind of treat it right as we go.
Yeah, 100%. And sure, we're going to get into this later on. I've got a segment lined up for this in particular, but even like technology, what that can allow you to do, you can re-explore, perhaps sites and whatnot, and see it from different angles, or dig a little bit deeper, proverbially speaking here, to find out new discoveries, just using or leveraging a tool, perhaps. So, I mean, there's different ways of going about it as well, I would guess, at least. But again,
it can be literally digging a bit deeper. What we realized on one of the projects I work on is in certain areas of the site, we didn't get quite to bedrock. So we're like, wait, we don't actually quite know how deep this. Next time we go, okay, note to self, got to get down to bedrock in a few spots. So it just depends on what the previous people did, what they focused on.
There you go. I've got this other question here. In your words, you're passionate about teaching to enrich students' lives through the joy and excitement of archaeology. What is the joy and excitement to you from your experiences? Like, I'm getting this vibe here that you definitely are jazzed up about what you do and you're enjoying it, and it comes across. But like, what is it exactly that fuels you?
It's all of the above, and I don't mean that. I know it's the worst answer. They're all good for different reasons, but it is. It's the stuff we keep touching on. It's like archaeology is intrinsically interesting, right? Like let's bring that out to the public. Let's not be scared of that. Like I hate it when academics are like, "Oh, Indiana Jones. Don't you hate Indiana Jones?" I'm like, "No, I love Indiana Jones. Indiana Jones is an awesome poster child." You mean to tell me we get a young Harrison Ford as our poster child? Great. Can I buy 2 of them? Fantastic. I love it. The public is savvy enough to know that I don't run from boulders.
Right.
Like the kid. I have never once had anyone go like, "Hey, Kinkella, how many boulders?" Never.
Yeah.
So like we don't have to be worried that we're somehow making archaeology too frivolous or something. It's like, can we double down on the interest in it? Can we double down on just the fascination of it? Can we double down on even the over the top swashbuckly aspects of it? Like people, they always like my stories about of my pain of cutting through the jungle and what you find and how sick did you get and
Yeah.
like
Well, again, I think like the word that comes to mind for me, at least in how I look at this field, it is adventure. There's a certain element, certain amount of that imbued within it all, whether it's the travel to get to the destination, whether it's like trekking through the
mhm,
jungle, whether it's discovery and exploration, all the like
yeah,
mishaps along the way. Like that, I think kind of like it's like I said, it's part of it. It's part of that whole experience, right?
it is.
Yeah.
It's this great sort of living in the moment thing. And it can be, you can have an adventure locally too. Like I've had them everywhere.
Yeah.
You can have an adventure right off the freeway and not realize it. It's bringing that interest that everyone has and just sort of uncorking it and being like, hey, man, it's okay. Let's all do it. Let's all have a little laugh. Let's all enjoy. Let's not, we don't need to be this faux academic, like boxed in, let me tell you about the measurement of the potsherds. The average is 1.25 centimeters. You're like,
Right. Right.
yes, but that's for later. That's for grad school. For now, can we enjoy it? It's fun. So it's really that simple. I'm there as sort of this conduit to just be like, hey, let's all uncork what we really are thinking and enjoy this.
Yeah. No, I love it. I love all this insight, and I love this take on it. Like I think I'll be straight up here. Like I think I hit the jackpot in terms of finding somebody within your field to speak about it in this
Yes,
way. Like,
yes,
honestly,
the
like
jackpot. Yes, really.
seriously, because like you could like when you were just sort of like in character there, and like mimicking somebody who is going about it in this more dry academic fashion. Like it's not
Uh-huh.
wrong. It's not the wrong way of doing it, but like
It's not.
when you're trying to get it out to the audience, when you're trying to like put it in front of people and get people interested in it, maybe that isn't the best approach. And speaking about it in the way that you are, I think it really sort of like it can connect with people, right? At the end of the day.
And don't you think maybe that's a little bit important, that whole connecting with people thing?
Right.
Oh, wait, archaeology. I think it's a study of ancient people. Oh, you don't say. So it's so funny when archaeology, when they're studying the most fantastic things, how they almost focus on making it super dry. It's
Mm.
like, stop it. You don't have to, you're trying to make this dry. It's hard.
Yeah. Academia has a funny way about going about promoting their work and their business and whatnot and what they're all about. It just, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. I've had several guests on this program that have, echoed the same sort of things. People have written books just gone into entertainment to kind of get out of the walls of academia because it was so dry. Like they're really fascinated with their work, but the way that they have to
Uh-huh.
present it there just never resonates with people. It doesn't get people interested in it. So they found other outlets, whether it's through movie, television, whatever it might be, to try to like, break through in a different way.
I do that. I do have an outlet that goes into TV and media and all that kind of
Yeah.
good stuff. But I also day to day push the stone up the hill in the academic world. I still present in academic
Yeah.
conferences
Well,
and
you
stuff, but
have
I
to
do
too,
it like
right?
this.
Yeah.
Yeah, more or less. But I'm at the point in my career, Chris, where I don't even need to that bad anymore. I'm just saying, yeah, like in seriousness, I'm cool. I'm in a good spot. I'm so happy. But when I do it, I bring a little excitement, and I can't help myself.
Yeah.
And I wish more people would. Again, I am not alone, but the percentages are
Right.
bad.
Right. Speaking of some of these, I don't know, inherent sort of challenges within it all, what are some of these other hindrances that you might have to deal with within the field? Are we talking like funding issues, getting grants, I guess, I don't know, a few other things that you might have mentioned as well, maybe pushback from others who might think that the way you're going about it isn't the most academic, and I'm finger quoting here right now. Like what are
Right.
some other challenges that you have within the work?
Everything you said. There we go. Next question. No, it's like when we were talking about what do I do in my office in a typical week or whatever. It's kind of dealing with those various things. So it could be funding or something. I will also say that every project I've ever been on, the funding has been different every year. Some years you get some big grant or something and things are pretty smooth. Other years you just don't get much of anything and have to kind of scrounge and the season's much shorter and everything in between. So it can be that. It can be getting like permits to do something because you have to be legal about everything, which is completely fine. But sometimes it's just difficult, or is it on private property or public land or whatever, right? That can be difficult. It can be like just like, oh my God, I need to publish this thing in this place. Oh, I gotta make sure I'm always behind on the writing it up, that kind of stuff. So there are these kind of very, I think, understandable, just sort of weekly or monthly headaches, that I think we all have. I think a lot of those problems are very similar to any job that, anyone has. Like, oh my God, I got to finish that project by June 1st or, whatever. Or, oh, it's going to be late. Oh, I got to send in the permission slip by the whatever. So there's those kind of things. Sometimes I haven't gotten a ton of pushback in the public world of stuff I've done. A little bit. I can tell that I'm not invited to the table of some of the most blue blood of conservative archaeologists in the world. But do I want to sit at that table? That's a boring ass table.
Yeah, yeah.
And again, I've just found my niche, and I'm so happy to be here. I love teaching at the community college level. I love because they're the intro classes, like intro to archaeology and that kind of stuff. That's my bread and butter, and I love bringing archaeology to young people and to returning students too. And just be like, hey, you can do this thing. Isn't it fun? Isn't it interesting? Isn't it something that, like, it's funny? It gets really deep and philosophical. Like, people will take this class where they'll get into archaeology and it starts to sort of define themselves. Like, I am somebody who is an archaeologist, or I am somebody, not even who is an archaeologist, but maybe who went on this trip to the jungle that I've always wanted to do and nobody else on my block did it, but I did this thing. And it's something that they can hold close to themselves for the rest of their lives. Like, hey man, maybe I have a job that's kind of an everyday job, but you know what? There was that one summer when I worked in Belize for 3 months.
Right.
And it's really interesting.
Yeah, yeah. Inherently so. Inherently so.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of, I guess, your outreach and whatnot, you do have the Pseudo Archaeology podcast. You've mentioned already that you've been in, some other media formats as well, YouTube channel also.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you could speak a little bit about this. The reasons I think are clear and why you're doing it, but maybe the podcast first. Tell us a little bit more about that.
It actually, I'll do it. I had this moment in my office. So basically, I call all this my media empire. I'm like, what do I do with my media empire? And I was worried for a long time about really jumping into this stuff. Now, I taught like intro classes and been like this and done talks and stuff forever. But about 6 years ago, I was sitting in my office and I remember I just had this moment where I was sitting right here. And I was like, screw it. I'm doing it. And what I meant was, I'm just going to jump in with both feet and go out to the media world as best I possibly can. And I did two things that day. I started my YouTube channel, Kinkella Teaches Archaeology, which I love. That's kind of my baby. And then I got an agent to get spots on like if you ever watched Discovery Channel or any like science channel.
Yeah. There's Netflix documentaries all the time covering this and that. Yeah. They always have these.
I've done a bunch of those where they have the like expert talking, and I go, well, you see the ancient Maya in 250 AD, right?
Yes,
like I'm that guy.
Okay, all right.
So I've done a bunch of those. So there's that world, which is really fun, and then in all this mix, I also just sort of got this podcast thing that fell in my lap, where the owner of the Archaeological Podcast Network, Chris Webster, I was talking with him because I was a part of another podcast with a group of people. And he's like, we used to do this podcast on pseudoarchaeology. Nobody's done it for like 5 years, but it's still got like 300 downloads a month or something. And I'm like, Chris, you're telling me that you have a podcast you used to do. It's like having a theater with 300 people in it and no show. You're not putting a show on and you already have an audience. I'm like, just sign me up. I'm going to do this. And so I just like went for it.
Yeah.
And it's been a real blast. It's been a trip because I've gotten kind of way deep into the pseudo archaeology world, or, the world of like the Atlantis and Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster and right, that world of stuff. It's been fascinating to learn more about that and debunk it and find out how thin those stories really are. They're just all BS. Like there's nothing to any of them, but people want them so bad. That's the
They
problem.
want to hear
Like,
about it. Yeah.
yeah, and I want to live in a world with Atlantis. It's more a world with Atlantis is more fun than a world without Atlantis. But I have to be the egghead in that situation where I go, "Sorry, man, there's no such thing as Atlantis," and they're like, "Boo! Shut up, Kinkella. You don't know." Like, I kind of know, And
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
been a trip. So I've just continued that like more and more. I wrote a textbook, and there's the TV thing. I was on a show that was on every day for a month over the summer called Strange and Suspicious with several other cast members. It was through TMZ,
Okay.
and it was just basically about what it says, just things that people are curious about or wonder about, and I had a blast. So I'm very happy to continue that road of stuff. So that's my media empire.
Yeah, yeah. If you don't mind me saying this, I mean, I think you're born for it. Like, I think, it comes across loud and clear in this conversation, and I'm sure all the other ones that you're part of too. Like, I think this is a big part of, I'm sure, of what you do, and I can see the enjoyment level being there for you because it just seemingly comes natural to you. So yeah, yeah.
You're not the first to say that. No,
It's
it's a
fun.
pleasure for me to do this. Yeah, it's like I'm happy.
Yeah.
So, thank you for saying that. I'm glad it comes through. I hope it does.
Yeah,
I take it
absolutely.
seriously. I want it to be, I want it to be a quality product.
Got this other segment here, a water cooler story segment. And this is one I've been looking forward to, quite frankly. Like, I'd love to hear what you've got for us today. Any story relating to your work, something memorable, something that sticks out.
Oh God. There's so many, like this is one of those things. I like when people ask me something like this. I feel like if you've ever watched the original Terminator, when you see the Terminator's view and he gets all these choices, like he goes, right?
Yeah.
That's how it is for me when somebody goes, tell me a story, something interesting. I'm like, beep, 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 beep.
Most thrilling. How about we go down that path? Most thrilling.
Okay. I have a couple.
Okay.
First, there's like the botfly story. So like, if you've ever heard of what a botfly is, it's a fly that lives in the jungle, and how it procreates is it puts its eggs on a mosquito, and then a mosquito bites you, and you think you have a mosquito bite, but you have oh so much more. So I had this mosquito bite on my ankle, and it just wouldn't heal. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't nasty, but just wouldn't heal. And it was a little bit weepy. Like it was just a little bit, wet, but it wouldn't heal. And then I remember, I'll never forget this. About 3 weeks after, I was brushing my teeth one day and I felt a wiggle in my ankle because the botfly had hatched and the larva was starting to feast on my ankle. Yay! So what I did was what you're supposed to do, which is you put a piece of tape over it for 24 hours, because the reason why the wound stays weepy is because the botfly larva breathes through the little tiny, the little tiny hole that like the mosquito makes? So it breathes through there. And I swear to God, I think I saw it breathe once. I saw these tiny things. It's like these little fans. They're like the size of a grain of sand. They're like, right? And then go back in. And it is like, just like, it's like, let's say it's, I don't know, quarter an inch long, half an inch long. I don't know, somewhere in there. So I waited for like 24 hours. You're supposed to put the piece of tape over it, and then it's supposed to asphyxiate. So that night comes, 24 hours. I take the tape off, and now I got to pop it out like a zit. So I sit there on this year. We were living in like these really basic kind of barracks situation. I was on like a cot, and so I'm sitting on a cot, and I'm like pushing on this like botfly larva, and I'm pushing. I'm like, and I can't get it. I see this white thing, like he started to go bleh.
Yeah.
Bleh, right? Started to come out. I could not get it. And I'm like, and I tried for like 20 minutes. I'm so sweaty. It's nighttime. I'm like almost out of it. And I finally, in a fit of desperation, just GI Joe style. I take out my pocket knife and I cut it out. Ah,
God.
and so I take it out, and it's small, it's like this, but the idea is freaking disgusting,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And so I put it on. I remember I put it down on the tape, and the rule is, of course, it didn't happen unless you took a photo. I was too tired. I basically just passed out, and I woke up in the morning, and the army ants had come and eaten my botfly larva. So I have no proof. I could be lying to you, but unfortunately, I'm not.
Oh
There
man,
you go.
talk
Is
about a
that
story.
fair?
Yeah, yeah.
Has the
I think
audience
we had a
vomited
lot of
yet?
people like archaeology, archaeology. I mean, I'm all in. I'm all in. I think we might have just lost a few there, but
I've done that. Like I've got other ones like that, that I always make sure to throw one in to the
yeah,
students,
yeah.
intro to archaeology. I'm like, what
Yeah,
those
yeah, yeah.
students,
Well,
you
it's a good way
know,
of filtering out the ones who are really, really serious about it. Yeah, I want to take it all the way.
it is. It is. So there you go. There's a water cooler.
That is, yeah, that's an all timer, I
So
think.
anyway, there I was at a buffalo.
Well, thanks for sharing that, though. No, no, no. It was a
There.
fun one.
Hey, are you sure? Are you sure that's a thing? You're like, do you have something else? Can we edit this out?
No, it was a fun one. It was a fun one. No, well, put you on the spot here. Let's aim for one more. You get one more about, I don't know. Well, how about of discovery? Something about on that side of things.
One of my favorites was just something that actually worked out. And it was finding an entire Maya pyramid, right? And and this is one like I'm talking about, it was maybe like 40 feet tall or something like this. And I found it through using Google Earth. I was at home and I was just messing around with Google Earth. And you know how if you roll the cursor, it'll go like it has an altimeter and it'll go up and down. And there was this one spot in our survey area where it would go like bloop, 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 bloop. And I'm like, hey, like the altimeter's going doo doo. Maybe there's something there. And I was like, note to self, next time I'm there, I'm going to walk out there and see what's up. And so I did. Me and one of the Belizean guys like went out there, and yes, it actually was like
Get out
sort
of
of a
here.
pyramid that had never been recorded in any way before. Now, I do have to say, everything we do basically on these archaeology projects hasn't been recorded before much, but this one was just interesting because it was bigger and it was built on a hill. So it's like you have the natural hill like this, then you have the pyramid on top. So while the structure itself was only maybe 30 or 40 feet tall, adding it to the hill made a very commanding scene. So it felt like 100-foot tall pyramid. That was really, really cool just because it was one of those 1 in 100 times where it worked. I had a plan. It seemed like a thing. I went out there and was rewarded by finding it. There's so many other times in archaeology where you just don't, where you're like, I'll try this, nothing. Hey, I'll dig here, nothing. So that's maybe another thing that's not talked about that much. How often there's just like not much, or you just don't really, you never know what you're going to find, but sometimes there's not much. So that was just really exciting. I remember, and just cutting through the jungle and being like, wait, I think this is,
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that,
yeah,
like that
yeah.
was that was a very exciting moment.
Yeah, yeah. I think we just got the people that fell off the wagon back on the wagon.
Yeah, they're on the wagon.
Yeah. They're back on. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, that's awesome. All right. Well, we are rounding the bend into this very last segment, a crystal ball segment. It is as it sounds. We're looking towards the future and whatnot. And we did touch upon this earlier. As far as technology, playing a role, like a lot of industries right now, AI is a big thing, but certainly there's some other technological
Mhm.
tools, I'm sure, software, whatever it might be, that's lending a hand as far as opening up the field a little bit further. And I have a
Yeah.
two-part question for you. One is the exciting elements of all this, and then on the flip side, is there anything that's concerning to you a little bit about the use of technology in your field moving forward?
I got answer to both. So first, in terms of technology, if you work in the jungle environment, the big one that comes up a lot, and it's true as it should, is LiDAR, right? So LiDAR is where a plane flies over an area of the jungle and it shoots lasers down like really fast, right? And because the trees are blowing a little, as they shoot the lasers down, a couple of the lasers will get to ground surface. So what you're doing is you do have the ability to see through the jungle canopy. It does work. It works really well. So when you do this, you all of a sudden see what you couldn't before because it was covered up with trees. So LIDAR is really, really great in terms of finding new archaeological sites, or much more often, kind of improving our knowledge of an archaeology site that we already know about. Like I've had we've had LIDAR done on one of the sites I work on, and it's really fascinating. It's like a check of all your work. You've worked there for years, and yeah, most of the stuff you're like, oh, good, we got this right. But then there'll be one thing where you're like, ooh, we missed that one. It's, and I don't fault anyone who misses anything in the jungle and then LIDAR picks it up, because if you've never been in the jungle, you don't understand how quickly things are covered. Like basically you're operating in like a 10-foot wide circle. You can only see this much. So there could be a big pyramid like right over there. You're not going to see it because you're just not right on it.
Right.
Yeah. So LIDAR is really great. Like LIDAR in the Amazon is really, really cool because it's sort of uncovering certain structures and stuff that haven't had a lot of but not a lot of research, So that, I think the next decade or two, some of the stories from the Amazon might be really, really
How new is that technology?
I don't know when it was like first started, but all this kind of technology, it depends on price. So at first it's like so expensive that nobody has it, and just it's like the government's using it or whatever. But then it's really only filtered down in like the last like 15 years or so. So every year still brings like, oh, here's more. It's not like they've mapped in the entire Maya forest, like not at all. They'll just be like these like parts, that have been done. So every year there's a bit more. So that's cool. There's still plenty to go.
Yeah. 100%. Now on the flip side?
Yeah. The downside is the flip side of this exactly, which is the over-reliance on technology. So what I've seen in archaeology is this like, not always, but this like, oh, we just have a LIDAR map, so we're good. It's like, no, you're not. You need to go down and ground truth it 110%, because LIDAR at the end of the day is just a tool, and so what matters is the human beings running the stuff, actually finding the stuff and figuring out what's going on. So just in terms of that kind of LIDAR example, the idea that you don't have to dig in archaeology because, we just use ground penetrating radar. Ground penetrating radar, while it's cool, it's not like you think. It's not like you just put a ground penetrating radar and you like see a skeleton right there or something. It's not like that at all. It's very general. It just sort of shows like areas that have been disturbed or something. It's really general. It's cool. Like, don't get me wrong, but this idea that you don't have to dig, I'm like, no, you got to dig. And I'm a fan of a light touch, protecting the archaeological site, of just focused small excavations. But you got to do those. You can't just be like, there's some data here. It's like, no. You got to do the thing, And I just don't think that's respected as much as it should be today.
I think that's happening in a lot of industries and a lot of fields right now. New tech comes in and people think automatically like, oh, we can just hand over XYZ job entirely to this technology. I mean, the reality is like you said, the word that you use is it is a tool. It can make things a little bit more efficient perhaps, but it very rarely does it completely erase a job that a human was doing. It can complement and maybe take over certain portions of that, but not everything, right? And I think that's the point you're trying to drive at there. Yeah.
It is. And in a perfect world, again, what it can do is just open up other avenues for that person to do. They can look ground truth a little more careful because they don't have to spend as much time mapping because they already have the LIDAR map. They can spend a little bit more time excavating because they don't have to map so much. And that can be awesome. That can be fine. But I see, there's this sneaky little scary trend of like, oh no, we don't need to dig. Digging is bad. And it's like, well, yeah, yes, we do destroy what we study as archaeologists, which is weird, but there's a little has to be done. It's the only way to get real data.
Well, I gotta say, Dr. Kinkella, I mean, this conversation has just flown by. I feel like we just got started here, and I've enjoyed it from start to finish. It's been exhilarating and a lot of fun. I'm sure I'm 100% confident that we've got a lot more people interested in the topic in this field based off of this conversation. So, I can't thank you enough for taking some time and joining the program.
Of course, dude. Like, Chris, this has been great, man. It's been fun. I'm happy to do this anytime. You need to have me back for, Andrew Kinkella a year later. Has he been lost in the jungle? So anyway, it was a joy. I dug, like answering your questions. It was awesome, and just like you said, it flew by. I just looked at the clock. I'm like, holy crap, it's been an hour.
Yeah, yeah, same.
So again, thank you so much.
Now, for those who are interested in learning more about Dr. Kinkella and his work, you can do so via LinkedIn. You can also check out his podcast, Pseudo Archaeology, as well as his YouTube channel, Kinkella Teaches Archaeology. And for reference, I will have links to all of this on the website lifeasa.com. And hey, if you like today's show, please be sure to tell a friend and share. To show further support, you can always rate, review, and subscribe wherever you access your podcasts. And then lastly, as I mentioned off the top, head on over to YouTube. I do have that channel over there, which hosts highlights from these audio recordings. And if you do make it over there, I would love that like or subscribe. Now, finally, don't forget to join us on the next episode of Life as a, where we'll continue to explore and unearth the details of professions and the people behind them. I'm your host, Christopher Schoenwald. Until next time, stay curious about life and living.